Hey guys, it's Maduro Bob here in the incredibly messy shop where I build most of my CBGs. We've got one here that we're in process. I've got a series of video snippets coming up in this video that's going to show how we got to this point on this CBG. We've got a nice big red colored box. We've got a walnut neck with a curly maple fretboard on top of it. We've got the neck designed at a 5-degree back angle so we get good height on the string over the box and good down bear on the bridge on the box. We've got a scarf joint in the headstock, and we've got ears covering up the scarf joint on the headstock so you can't really see it. We haven't shaped the neck yet. That's going to be a separate video. But say I have the box here. It's a bolt-on neck. Comes right out when it's not bolted on. Bracing on the inside of the box is really quite simple. Something that I've not seen done before, but it's the way I build all of my guitars. I'd like to think that I invented it, but it is so simple that surely somebody else has done it. But if you watch this video and you build a guitar like this, hey, throw me some love. Say, I made it with the Maduro Bob style. Something like that. So it's nice simple bracing with a big block in front, a smaller block in back, and dowels in between that transfer the stress from the strings up to where the neck is bolted on. And these dowels can, I'll show you on in the video, these dowels can be positioned anywhere inside the box to make room for whatever you're going to be putting inside the box. Be it a pickup up near the front, or tuning pots down on the sides, or as I'm going to put in, well, I don't have it here, there's going to be a resonator cone inside here, so I had to make sure there was going to be room for the resonator cone to fit inside here without bumping into the bracing, and room for the volume and tone pots that are going to come out on the outsides here. So watch this few video clips that are attached onto this one, and we'll walk through how we got to this stage in building this CBG, and then in a couple of future videos we'll get this thing finished up. Okay, here we are getting ready to scarf joint a neck. I've got my radial arm saw here. I've got a piece of wood here that's cut at about a 7.5 degree angle here. I've got my neck blank that I'm going to use to make a CBG neck. This is, it's probably slightly fatter than 1 inch thick and 1.5 inches wide. One of the key points about doing a scarf joint, especially the way that I do it with the face that you cut being the face of the headstock, we're going to cut at an angle through this neck, at about a 7.5 degree angle through this neck, and the face of what we cut is going to be the face of the headstock. So the thicker the material we're cutting through, the longer that face is going to be and the longer a headstock we can have. Very quick and simple. Here's the angle I'm going to replicate, and I use this board just so it gives me something to clamp to when I set up the wood to cut. So I just adjust the saw so I'm at this angle. I could use the gauge on the radial arm saw. That's not nearly as much fun though, as just beating the thing and getting it to line up properly. And once I'm there, that's pretty much where I want to be. Clamp this board in place. Drop the saw blade so it's low enough. Okay, the saw's set up and ready to go. Now I've got the neck blank. I want to start my cut somewhere near the end, but not all the way up in the corner. I want to have a little bit of room to work with. So I'm going to put it in about like this. Somewhere in that ballpark, and then I'll clamp this thing in place. And now it's ready to go. More hearing protection and we'll make the cut. Okay, so you see here's the piece we cut off, and here is the neck blank. That's now going to be the face of the headstock. This piece was on here like that. We're just going to flip it around and glue it on the back like this. Now we want this thickness here somewhere around 5/8 of an inch or so. That gives us plenty of material, and also plenty of material strong enough and enough room for your typical tuner to be able to fit through there and attach into place. So we'll measure it out so it's around 5/8 or so, and glue it like this, clamp it into place. Now one of the tricks that I use on the fretboards also is the staple trick. So I'll estimate where 5/8 of an inch or so is going to be. Put myself a little line with my pencil. Now I'll pop a couple of staples in there. And then nip those staples off with my nippers. So they're just barely sticking out. You see how they're just barely sticking out there. And then I take this back piece, line it up with the mark that I made, and get it flush. Squeeze it tightly in place. In fact, I can use a clamp. Clamp it down. All that does is give us, while we're gluing it, to keep this piece we just cut off that we're gluing back on, to keep it from slipping and sliding around. Those staples will hold it in place. We'll take this back off, place the glue on it, stick it back on there in those same holes that the staples have made, and that'll hold it all nice in place. So I glue that up. Once it's glued, if I don't have a perfect edge here, I'll hit it with a plane or sandpaper or something to get it nice and flat, because as you see, we're getting our neck going here. The next thing I do is I have earpieces. Once we have this scarf joint glued up, we're going to cover that joint by sticking an ear on either side. Now you can see where my cut starts right here. That's where the front edge of that 45, where I want it to land, just like that. Now glue it up so the bottom of this ear is flush with the bottom of the headstock, and it's going to be sticking out a little bit fat on top. That's fine, that's how we want it. We'll get this one glued, and then we'll use a square to go across here and line up where the next one's going to go right in there as well, and then we'll get it glued on. So you can see we're starting to build up a headstock there. Both of them will be a little bit proud on top, but flush on the bottom. Where it's proud on top, then we'll take a jack plane or even sandpaper, random orbital sander will work well. Sand it down flush, and that also gives us a chance, if we happen to make that scarf joint and it wasn't perfectly square, and this one isn't perfectly square, but it's close. This you can see right here, not quite a 90-degree cut. It's maybe 88 degrees or so. It's very close. But now I can fix that when I have my ears glued on here and I start hitting it with the jack plane. I can plane down this side a little bit more than that side and get this line so it's perfectly square. That's where the nut is going to go, going across right here. We want that to be a nice square look. So we can easily fix that up with the plane or with the sandpaper after we get everything glued in place. So that's doing the scarf joint and covering up the edges with the ears. We'll have these guys glued in place. And more or less like that, right? And then we'll cut this off. You can see where the backside joint is. We'll cut it off right there. So that edge, that glue edge right there where these two pieces are glued together, is not going to be visible to the top, and it's not going to be invisible on the back side because it's really right on the corner. And then from there, we'll cut a 45 down on either side. And we'll end up with a neck that looks like, I should have had this handy, looks like this, more or less like this. You can see how these guys went together. More or less the same thing. We cut it right on that joint there, so that joint is hidden, and we cut 45s down on either side on the ears we had on. And then you can also see where I've taken a plane and I've planed this down smooth, so it's a flat surface and it's square right across this cut where the nut's going to go. Okay, here we are. We're back. We've got the neck blank here. We've made our scarf joint. We've glued the scarf joint together. We put the ears on, and then we planed it down on top. So our headstock's coming along nicely. We have a nice long neck blank, longer than we need actually, and we cut a little piece off of the end for the heel. And then you can see the heel, hopefully you can see it here, we cut it at about a 5-degree angle so that when it's attached to the neck, it's at a little bit of a 5-degree angle. It holds the neck back at a 5-degree angle. That gives us higher action on the box, more down bear on the bridge, and a little bit better sound out of the cigar box. Now we're going to take this heel, do a little work to it so it'll attach to the neck properly. So it goes here. Now I'm going to use a Kreg jig. Simple little set here. You can see the brace, a driver, an Allen wrench, and the drill bit with the depth spacer. Very simple thing to use. incredibly useful, nice strong bond. I recommend everyone buy one. This one is like 30 bucks or so. So we take this guy. It's got depth settings on it, going anywhere from a 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches or so. I'm going to set it at 3/4 of an inch. My heel is actually deeper than 3/4 of an inch, but I don't want to set this too deep because that'll make the end of the screw come out too deep down into the heel. I actually want the screw to come out towards the back end of the heel to give me a little bit better leverage. So this is a very simple process. We grab a ruler, I have a pencil, mark off where center is. Gives me a way to eyeball where to put the jig here. You can see the jig has 2 holes in it. We're just going to use one of them. It's got lines on the end, so I use those lines to line up on the heel so I can use the drill. So then we just drill it. That's all there is to it. And now this is going to attach onto our neck just like this. Okay, so the next question is, where is it going to attach onto the neck? That's actually very simple. We mark where the end of the fretboard is going to go here, where the nut's going to be. Easy peasy. Then I know my scale length that I'm going to use here ends up being 24 3/4 of an inch. So now I figure out where on the box I want the bridge to go. Then I measure that distance between where I want the bridge to be and the front of the box, subtract that from 24 3/4 inch. So if I had a 8 3/4 inch distance from the front of the box to where the bridge is, then I'd want what is that, 16 inches between my nut and where the edge of the box is. And where the edge of the box is where I attach my heel. Then when it's done, I'll take a countersink drill and drill right down through this hole, so that not only is this heel going to be glued to the neck, it's also going to be screwed into the neck, so it's not going to move at all. Okay, here we are. We've got the heel attached. You can see I've drilled the countersink down in through the heel that's going to go into the neck. I haven't put the screw in there yet. Now I've estimated about where the end of the neck needs to be so it covers enough of the bracing to get a good purchase on the bracing. So I'm going to lop that off. There we are. So we've got it cut off. We've got enough room for the bracing in there. We've got the heel on. You can see I've still got this line where I started my scribe work measuring off where the edge of the box needs to be. Now the fretboard is going to fit on here. Something about like this. If I want a full 24-inch fretboard, well, it's got to extend over the box a little bit because the edge of the box is up here on the line, right? So I've got to cut out this bit of the neck at least the depth of the top of the box, so that the neck will slip in here, slip into the box, and the fretboard will slide right over the top of the box. Now remember, of course, we're going at a little bit of an angle, so it's got to be just the depth of the box up here at the front edge of the box, and then it's got to angle down a little bit deeper. So I'll do that. I can do that here on the radial arm saw. I may take it over to the bandsaw, just kind of eyeball and cut a slight angle. But first thing I got to do is get the depth of the initial cut here set. Now if you're building a resonator like me, you've already cut a hole in the box, and you can use that as your depth gauge. And then I've got my depth gauge here, the top of the box. So I just put this underneath, ride this on there, again, hearing protection. And we cut just along that line. Not sure how well you can see that, so there's my my cut for the depth of the top of the box. Now I'll cut this out at about something like a 5-degree angle or so to make sure I got enough room, so it'll come down something like this. So I can either dado that out here on the radial arm saw. I'm actually going to take this over to the bandsaw and cut it out like this. You could also easily do this with a handsaw or a chisel or anything. All you're doing is making sure you've got enough material cut away that this will slide up underneath the box, the lid of the box, and the lid of the box will still be able to be closed.